For years, Israel and Iran fought each other in the shadows. Through cyber attacks, proxy militias, covert strikes, assassinations, and deniable operations, both sides tried to weaken the other without triggering a direct regional war. But now that shadow conflict has burst into the open, missiles are crossing borders in plain sight. Air defenses are being tested in real time, energy markets are reacting, and perhaps most importantly, a second war is unfolding at the same time, the war over what the world is allowed to see. Because in a modern missile conflict, destruction is only one part of the story. The other part is narrative. Who was hit? How badly? Which videos are real? Which images are old? Which side is exaggerating and which side is hiding losses? In this war, every crater is also a message. Every blackout becomes a political symbol. Every viral clip can shape public morale, foreign opinion, financial markets, and military calculations. Over the past several days, social media platform X has been flooded with claims that Iranian missile and drone strikes caused far greater damage inside Israel than the public has been told. Some posts describe massive fires, direct hits, blackouts, and suppressed footage. Others claim Israel is using censorship to conceal the true scale of the damage. These posts have spread widely, especially among pro-Iran and anti-Israel networks, often paired with dramatic video clips and anonymous eyewitness claims. But the reality is more complicated than either side wants to admit. Verified reporting does show that Iranian retaliation has hit Israel. Reuters has reported missile impacts in central Israel, visible destruction at strike sites, and economic losses that Israeli officials say could exceed 9 billion shekels a week. Photographs published by Reuters also show damaged buildings, emergency responders, and urban strike aftermath inside Israel after Iranian barrages. At the same time, that does not automatically validate every viral claim online. Wartime censorship, selective filming, recycled footage, partisan framing, and deliberate propaganda all distort the picture. Israel has strong incentives to project resilience. Iran has equally strong incentives to project penetration and deterrence. Both sides want their public, and the wider region, to believe they are winning, and that is what makes this conflict so significant. This is no longer just a military exchange between two long-standing enemies. It is a test of air defense credibility, of deterrence, of state secrecy, of media trust, and of whether open-source information can still tell the truth during a fast-moving war. It is also tied to much bigger systems: oil prices, Gulf security, global shipping routes, alliance politics, and the possibility that a regional confrontation could spill far beyond Israel and Iran. Reuters reported this week that the widening war has already shaken energy markets and raised fears around critical Iranian oil infrastructure, including Karg Island, one of the most important hubs in Iran's export system. So the real question is not simply whether Israel was hit. It was. The real question is this: in a war where both missiles and misinformation are flying, how do you separate real battlefield damage from strategic storytelling? That is the story behind the story. The sudden surge of claims about hidden destruction in Israel did not appear in a vacuum. It followed a dramatic escalation that transformed the long-running shadow war between Israel and Iran into an open missile exchange. The immediate trigger came at the end of February 2026, when Israel, with support from the United States, launched a coordinated wave of strikes against Iranian military and nuclear-related facilities. The operation targeted air defense systems, missile infrastructure, and key sites linked to Iran's strategic weapons programs. Israeli officials framed the operation as a necessary preemptive strike, aimed at preventing Iran from reaching a new threshold in its military capabilities. For Tehran, the attack crossed a red line. Iran responded with a scale of retaliation rarely seen in the region. Within days, waves of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and long-range drones began launching toward Israeli territory and U.S. military installations across the Middle East. Cities like Tel Aviv, Haifa, and areas in central Israel suddenly found themselves under sustained missile alerts. Sirens sounded repeatedly as civilians rushed into shelters and fortified rooms designed to withstand blasts. Israel's multi-layered air defense network, including the famous Iron Dome system, activated continuously, intercepting incoming projectiles in the skies above urban areas. But no air defense system is perfect. Even highly successful interception systems allow some projectiles to get through. Some missiles slip past defenses, while others are destroyed in the air but send fragments raining down. To understand why the information war around Israeli damage has become so intense, you have to look at the deeper strategic logic behind this conflict. For decades, Israel built one of the most sophisticated missile defense networks in the world. Systems like Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow were designed to protect the country from rockets, missiles, and long-range threats coming from multiple directions. This layered defense architecture is central to Israel's national security strategy. Israel is a relatively small country with dense population centers and highly concentrated infrastructure. A successful barrage of missiles hitting major cities, ports, or energy facilities could have outsized economic and psychological effects. Because of that vulnerability, Israeli planners invested heavily in defensive technology, capable of intercepting incoming threats before they reach the ground. But missile defense is not simply a technical system. It is also a strategic symbol. If the system appears strong, Israel projects resilience and deterrence. If the system appears weak or overwhelmed, the psychological effect could ripple across the region. And that is exactly why Iran's strategy focuses on saturation. Iran AWS missile doctrine is built around the idea that even the most advanced defense network can be strained if enough projectiles arrive at the same time. Instead of relying on a single high-precision strike, Iran uses a mix of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and long-range drones launched in coordinated waves. The logic is simple: force the defending system to intercept dozens or hundreds of targets simultaneously. Some may be intercepted, others may slip through. Even interceptors themselves are expensive, while offensive missiles can often be produced more cheaply in large numbers. In strategic terms, Iran is attempting to challenge Israel's most important defensive advantage. But Tehran also understands something else about modern warfare. Perception can be just as powerful as destruction. If Iran can convince regional audiences that Israeli defenses are failing, that message travels far beyond the battlefield. It affects deterrence, diplomacy, and the credibility of Israel's military technology. This is why viral videos and dramatic claims on social media matter so much. A single clip showing a missile impact can spread across millions of screens in hours. Online narratives can magnify the perceived success. The strikes, interceptions, and viral videos may appear local in the moment. A city under alert, a building damaged, a barrage launched overnight. But the systems affected are global. Energy markets react, shipping routes adjust, airlines cancel flights, insurance premiums rise, governments recalculate their security posture. And financial markets begin pricing in the possibility that a regional conflict could become something much larger. The first global shock runs through energy. The Middle East remains one of the most strategically important energy regions in the world. Any conflict involving Iran immediately raises fears over oil exports, refining capacity, and the safety of tanker routes. Traders do not wait for the worst-case scenario to happen. They react to the risk that it might happen. That means even limited strikes can push oil prices upward if markets believe supply disruption is becoming more likely. And the danger is not just direct damage to oil infrastructure. It is the threat environment around it. If shipping companies believe the Persian Gulf is becoming more dangerous, traffic patterns change. If insurers raise war risk premiums for vessels crossing the region, transport costs rise. If governments start warning commercial operators about missile or drone threats, the effect spreads beyond energy into logistics and trade. This is how regional warfare turns into global inflation pressure. Higher oil prices feed into transportation costs, manufacturing costs, food distribution, electricity generation, and consumer prices. A missile launched in the Middle East can eventually raise costs for households thousands of miles away. The second shock runs through trade routes. Even when the world's biggest choke points are not fully closed, the perception of danger can still disrupt commerce. Shipping companies may reroute, delay, or reduce movements through high-risk waters. Airlines may suspend routes across contested airspace. Ports may face congestion as schedules shift. Modern trade depends on predictability. War destroys predictability. And once uncertainty enters the system, delays start multiplying. A disrupted tanker schedule affects refinery planning. A rerouted cargo shipment affects factory inputs. A suspended flight network affects tourism, labor mobility, and business travel. These are the hidden economic consequences of geopolitical escalation, not dramatic enough to dominate headlines every day, but powerful enough to strain glow. The Middle East is filled with interconnected alliances, proxy groups, and military positions. If the conflict spreads to additional fronts, whether through militia activity, strikes on U.S. bases, or attacks on shipping lanes, the war could widen quickly. In such a scenario, regional actors might be pulled into the confrontation, turning a bilateral conflict into a multi-front regional crisis. The third and most dangerous scenario is strategic miscalculation. Missile warfare carries a constant risk of unintended escalation. A strike that hits the wrong target, causes mass civilian casualties, or damages critical infrastructure could force leaders to respond more aggressively than they originally intended. Once that threshold is crossed, political leaders often lose the flexibility to de-escalate. History shows that many wars expand not because leaders planned them that way, but because events spiraled faster than diplomacy could catch up. And this is where the information war becomes critical again. In modern conflicts, public perception can shape political decisions. Viral footage, shocking images, or dramatic claims online can influence domestic pressure, international reactions, and diplomatic negotiations. Governments understand this, which is why controlling information has become almost as important as controlling territory. In the Israel-Iran conflict, both sides are trying to shape the story the world sees. Iran wants audiences to believe its missiles can penetrate Israel's defenses and impose real costs. Israel wants audiences to believe its defensive systems remain effective and its society resilient. Each narrative is designed to influence allies, adversaries, and observers far beyond the immediate battlefield. But the reality of modern warfare sits somewhere between those narratives. Missile defenses intercept many threats, but not all of them. Strikes cause damage, but rarely the apocalyptic destruction that propaganda suggests. Information spreads instantly, but truth often arrives much more slowly. That is why understanding this conflict requires looking beyond individual videos, posts, or headlines. It requires stepping back and examining the systems behind the story: military technology, strategic signaling, economic vulnerability, and the global networks that connect regional wars to worldwide consequences. Because the real significance of this conflict is not just the explosions in the night sky, it is what those explosions reveal about the world we live in. A world where wars are fought across multiple dimensions at once: military, economic, informational, and psychological. A world where perception travels faster than facts. And a world where the line between battlefield reality and narrative warfare grows thinner with every new conflict. And in that world, understanding the story behind the story may be just as important as understanding the war itself.